means that the NRL is still going to get played at least next week. It seems like is the latest. Whereas the Rugby League season in the in Europe, in England, the RFL and Super League issued a joint statement today at 5:30ish after there was a new update from the government, and this ultimately means that the season's suspended until the 3rd of April initially. Is the key thing there. So the Rugby Football League and Super League Europe today announced a suspension of fixtures in the Betfred Super League season initially until the 3rd of April, during which time the season structure and fixture rescheduling will be considered. This follows the latest government advice regarding social contact and mass gatherings. The Super League clubs discussed a range of contingency plans with the RFL at their board meeting in Huddersfield. The situation will be reviewed with broadcasting and sponsors throughout the initial suspension. These changes will also apply across the other competitions, including Championship, League One, Betfred Women's Super League, and the Community Game, with the RFL to have further discussions of the implications at meetings of Championship and League One clubs and Community Board over the next couple of days. A joint statement from Robert Elston, who's the CEO of Super League Europe, and Ralph Rimmer, who's the CEO of the Rugby Football League, said, "These are unprecedented times, and they present significant financial and commercial implications for Rugby League, which will be further considered during the period of suspension. Super League is also an international competition, and consideration has to be given to our clubs in Canada and France, particularly around the travel restrictions and scheduling fixtures. Player welfare and maintaining the integrity of the competition are key concerns moving forward. Equally, our responsibilities to Rugby League communities remain the front of the mind for all of us. The whole country is facing major challenges, and the support of our fans, partners and stakeholders is needed now more than ever before." So, finally some leadership from our leadership. Finally a clear direction, and it does seem like they're giving themselves some time. So they've called everything off effectively for 2 weeks, giving themselves some time to think about what needs to happen after that, giving themselves some time to let the situation we're in develop a bit more so they can make a reasonable judgment during that 2 weeks about what to come next. How do you feel about no Rugby League? In fact, first, how do you feel about us being sort of one of the last significant sports to keep playing? I mean, I know there was British basketball games over the weekend as well, and there was obviously horse racing, somehow immune to the virus. But we were the last major team sport to be playing.
I'm not an epidemiologist. However, the Chief Scientific Officer and the Chief Medical Officer, who are in positions of influence and knowledge and power, suggest that, at the time, mass gatherings were not going to significantly influence the spread of cases. That was their position. Therefore, they didn't ban it.
And to be fair, we don't have any evidence to suggest that, there was a big upturn in cases after Castleford, Salford, or, not Huddersfield. It wasn't a mass gathering, but
no, but we went, we
or Hull went ahead.
Yeah, we wouldn't know that anyway yet. But even so, the crowds were down for them, and I'm sure if you were in an at-risk group, hopefully you didn't go because that was the sensible thing to do. I think it was right to keep playing. You weren't banned from playing. As people say, there's plenty of time to panic later, and for me, it felt like playing on was the right thing to do. I think football, particularly, it was tied up with some of the European concerns, wasn't it, in terms of games going on, and I think they naturally led to a conclusion where suspending of major. They're worried about Euro 2020, aren't they, and things like that.
They also had the issue of actual cases being confirmed within their competition, which kind of heightens your immediacy to the problem, whereas we, I guess, kept ourselves distanced almost kind of like the government were doing, and almost not believing it to be as bad as it potentially is. I don't know.
Well, the truth is that playing, playing another round of games a week after you played or the last round of games, if you believe the people who understand these things, that wouldn't have had a significant influence. Apparently, it would move it forward by a day or something of that kind of nature in terms of the curve, which we're all fond of talking about now. So from my point of view, they weren't restricted to do so. There were, some commercial imperatives, probably some kind of, having another game on Sunday and a bit more profile and people watching it that wouldn't normally, it was an opportunity, and I don't blame them for taking that opportunity. And as far as I'm aware, there's no proof that it actually had a significantly detrimental effect, and I don't think you would ever be able to prove it either way, to be frank.
No. And so now we move on into this suspension initially, like we say, for sort of basically for 2 rounds of Super League. One round of Super League. Hold on, let me get my head around this. 2 rounds of Super League.
2 rounds of Super League, because then it's back to the Cup, isn't it?
And then it's back to the Cup the week after. So, realistically, do we feel that that's going to be enough? I mean, people are talking about, pregnant people and people over the age of 70 and stuff having to be locked away for 3 months. That's a lot longer than 2.5 weeks, isn't it? So,
yes.
Do you think this is just a biding their time to make a more reasoned decision? And do you think under the fact that they've said this, during which time the season structure and fixture rescheduling will be considered?
Well, my personal opinion, I think you've hinted at this. I think it's a 2-week opportunity for them to reschedule it, probably based on a reduced fixture list, probably removing duplicate fixtures with teams.
Yeah.
Probably looking, they'll be looking at their marquee events. They'll be looking at the Challenge Cup date. They'll be looking at the Grand Final date. They'll be concerned about Magic Weekend. They'll be concerned about the Summer Bash to a slightly lesser extent. These are they're the kind of events they'll be thinking of that are money spinners in one way or another that they'll be trying to maintain. And if Japan is talking about running the Olympics in the summer, there's no reason to think that we couldn't play games to some extent when the worst of this hopefully is past, or certainly to plan to do that. I think at the moment people need something positive, and I think if you can lay out a way forward with it that you hope that you'll be able to do, I don't think that's a bad thing.
So we did have some listener views in on this one. Carsten Brumer said China has been in shutdown mode since 3 months ago, and they don't look like changing this. This will be a lot worse than all think. So that's the doom scenario. We also had some contact from Tom Andrews, who said, as long as it's back for Magic Weekend and Catalan away, I'm happy. Rugby League seriously can't afford to lose its marquee events like Magic. So there's an element of seriousness there and an element of selfishness there from Tom. Fatboy Rob said, you already know my solution. As far as I'm concerned, that grand final has already been played, and his solution is basically the team that won the last game before the suspension should be given the title. Conveniently, that would mean it's the Castleford Tigers. Shocking.
Shocking.
Marie Wright at Witchwood Lady, an old friend of the show. Wonderful to hear from Marie. It's been a while. She said that she thinks it's going to be a little more than a couple of weeks. Sad face. So a few different views there. David Kay also got in touch, David Pye, to say that he thinks that after the 3rd of April, he expects games to be played behind closed doors. Now, I've put forward on Twitter last night, through the SLP account, my solution to how we do it with the Super League, and it goes in line with what you just said. It's probably not a unique idea. Probably other people have said it. I hope we were one of the first, because then we can take some sort of credit. Because I hadn't read it anywhere else when I first said it, but like I say, it's not exactly revolutionary. But we should shut down the Super League season now for 5 weeks. Redraw the fixture list, but without the loop game, so you're just playing teams home and away. And I say 5 weeks, not 6 weeks, when there's 6 loop games, because we've still got some games to catch up that have already been missed so far this season. That gives us an opportunity to at least catch up some of those games.
Yeah.
But the ideal thing here is we've not got to Easter weekend yet, and I think Easter weekend's the first time a team would have played each other a second time. So this 5-week period would extend past Easter, which is tragic. We don't want to lose those Good Friday games and all of those things. It's a real saddener. But if we have to take this seriously, which we do as a health concern, for our players, for the fans, we have a lot of elderly fans that go and watch our games, in particular as well. The Grey fan base is strong in Super League. We've got to think about these groups as much as everything else. So what we can then do is redraw the fixtures for the rest of the season once we're back, so that we only get home and away against each side, and we don't lose too much action. Hopefully we can contain any sort of spread amongst the playing groups in that time. Obviously the Toronto Wolfpack have announced that there's 4 of their players suffering coronavirus symptoms, so they've isolated the whole squad off. I'm sure now that this has happened, all the other teams, Leeds Rhinos we've talked about before, but all the other teams will put their players into lockdown. The one difficulty here isn't the Toronto Wolfpack, because they're not a Canadian side at the moment. They've not played in Canada yet this year. They're based in the UK, located in the UK still, which means that they can have their fixtures in the blocks that they always wanted if it needs to be. If we have to push off them getting back to Canada until later on in the season, that's how we have to do the fixtures to get this league done. The one complicating factor is Catalans. One, they've already got so many fucking games to catch up on, but 2, the virus in Europe is where the epicenter of things is at the moment, and France is, the south of France is right in the middle of all that, really.
Yeah.
So that's a complicating factor, and you wouldn't want to be doing what the Warriors have had to do and saying, well, Catalans, get your whole squad over here, get yourself isolated off over here, and get back into it. But that might have to be a temporary solution for a period where we say you've got to play a month of games in the UK whilst things smooth over, assuming we are not as bad as Italy, Spain, and other places. Because we don't want to have the constant to and from travel, do we? We want to avoid that as much as we can, you see.
Absolutely, and I don't think we'll be. I think travel will continue to be greatly restricted, even if things like if general isolation and kind of staying at home, even if that is loosened, I think international travel will be affected for a long time to come. I think that's why airlines and things like organisations like that are particularly concerned. So yeah,
there'll be a worry, won't there, for fans who've got season tickets and are going to miss out on games. Now, fans have to understand this is unprecedented, and have to sort of accept that we've been forced into this situation rather than anyone choosing to be in this situation. But there could be some options that they could offer, like some sort of extra renewal discount on 2021 season tickets for people who had 2020 season tickets. I'd be giving them free tickets to 3 of the away games that they have to go to for the rest of the season. That's how I'd do it, to compensate fans. But not all fans like travelling to away games as much as maybe people like me or some of the SLP family. So that might not work for everyone. Free jersey, something like that. Something to reward those fans and say thank you and we're sorry for the inconvenience to you, but not. People have to realise there's something else out there. I have a Challenge Cup idea.
Go on.
Which I ran by you sort of before we started the show, which I think is play the games behind closed doors. No tickets have been sold yet for these games. I think the broadcast restrictions might be a bit looser or workable with the broadcaster than maybe what we might get with the Super League coverage. I think if you went to the BBC and said, you get first choice of games, you get the games you choose,